Hey, Scott Jordan is back from vacation, and Mark Warner's here for Jancast number 118, February 24th, 2022. And what is this, Mark? Huh?
I'm amazed at the hat. I think it's got a specific utilitarian purpose, doesn't it?
Yes, it's got flaps on it. This is what I wear when I'm out surfing, and that's where I've been for the last 2 weeks. So it was fun. Good to be back. Good
So that was not surfing off the coast of Stone Harbor in 32 degrees.
No. I was in beautiful Costa Rica, and let me tell you a little story about that. So the last time I was at the exact place I went to this time, it was 2 years ago. And what happened 2 years ago, Mark?
Well, yeah, I think we didn't even know what COVID stood for.
Yep, I've told the story many times. My daughter Nikki, who handles our marketing, was with me, and it was like the middle of the week, and we started getting these emails saying, "Do you have disinfectants in stock? Where can I get an order? How much can I buy from you?" And we're like, going, "What is going on?" I had no idea what. I mean, keep in mind that none of this had happened before, right? We've had outbreaks and stuff like that, but down there, you surf in the morning and surf in the evening. In the middle of the day, you can't really do anything. So most people just, read books or whatever. But Nikki and I were answering on these emails, and other clients, there's like another 6, 7 people there. And they're saying, how come you guys are working every day? And we're like, you have no idea what is going on back in the United States. And they said, yeah, and 2 weeks after we were there, they shut the place down. You couldn't even go to the beach. You literally could not go to the beach. And actually, you couldn't go in and out of the country at that point. And it all started. So it's been 2 years. Unfortunately, I was able to go back, and it was a very pleasant experience. A little bit different, but really good. I did notice, like, the hotel we stayed in before we went to the place that we go surfing at. It was a Hilton. I'm very impressed with their cleaning standards in that place. And I think you said you saw the same thing. Stickers on the doors, kind of like a crime scene.
Yeah, it's security, tamper-proof tape. I had stayed at one down in Baltimore working with Johns Hopkins, and going into the room, the door was taped shut. And my first reaction was, well, what? Like, what happened in there?
There's a reason why they don't want us in there, right?
I read the fine print, and it said, this is a security thing to indicate the room has been completely cleaned, disinfected, and checked.
Yeah.
And then sealed. So I thought that was kind of cool.
I was very impressed with it. I'm sure there's a lot of people that watch the show, and they've traveled more than you or I, and so it's maybe not that new, but I thought it was very impressive. And but got to the place we were going to, and not a lot of masks going down there, because actually we got a warning from the State Department beforehand that Costa Rica was one of the places you shouldn't be going to. But then I read the stats that the United States is actually worse than Costa Rica as far as the possibility of getting COVID. So I was like, well, so it seems like it's a lot safer going there than it is staying in the US. So it ended up working out okay. Yeah.
And actually, that probably holds somewhat true even today.
Yeah.
The statistics on a worldwide level show the United States is actually one of the highest in the world in terms of infection rates and deaths still, even though we're really happy to see the stats on the decline going down. It doesn't doesn't underestimate really what the the fact that there are still deaths happening, and that's certainly catastrophic for those families. So but the fact that it is declining, and the fact that we're seeing the mandates for masks being dropped on a state by state and city by city basis, those are some smart folks offering that kind of guidance to these cities and states and the CDC and so on. So that's an indication that they're seeing down the road, and they're like, this light at the end of the tunnel is actually the end of the tunnel, not a train. So that's the good news. I mean, even 3M kind of said, like, oh gosh, we think we're gonna start losing sales in masks.
It's gonna be like at the Home Depot. There's just gonna be pallet loads of masks, like they have with hand sanitizer. But so we got back and found that Delaware County, where Bullen's located, has a 95% vaccination rate for at least one shot. And we've decided as a company that effective tomorrow, which is, we're recording this a little bit early, but effective on Thursday, Bullen employees won't have to wear a mask any longer. So that's really great, because we've gone, those of you that have watched the show and kept up with it, we've kind of gone through the whole spectrum of stuff here. So we had a mandatory vaccine policy that was put in place that caused a little bit of issues, but it's great to finally be able to say, when we're at work at least, we won't have to wear masks any longer. So yeah, it is hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel, or whatever that saying is. Right?
So, I think, this would be things that we end up telling our grandkids about, and it'd be written up in history books. The COVID-19 outbreak in the US in 2020, you became aware of it in February of 2020. I mean, the whole country shut down in March of 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, and we were all told, like, see what you can do with working from home. Like what? From the laundry room? So I mean, it changed our whole mentality regarding.
Yeah, I remember
life.
early on there, because Bullen's the essential business. My normal drive into work is maybe 25 minutes if it's not during rush hour. And you remember when there was like nobody on the streets? There's no cars. I'm going down the main highway here, is called the Blue Route, and literally there was nobody on the road. It was like, it was crazy. I'd never seen anything like that before.
There was not only no other cars, well, few other cars. There were no cops either. So the cars you saw were doing 100 miles an hour.
That's true. They usually go pretty fast on that particular road anyway. They were. I don't know why they're going so fast, since there wasn't any traffic. But yeah, we've gone through a lot of changes.
Well, it's changed the way we look at a lot of things, like we've been talking about extreme cleanliness. We're talking about masking, and my wife and I went into a restaurant a week ago and nobody had masks on. We were carrying ours in, like trying to be respectful of those folks that, might be wearing masks. And so nobody was, not the staff of the restaurant, none of the guests. So we kind of set our masks down on the table, and it was like, all right. But, we were talking to each other, and it was like, it feels weird.
Yeah,
it feels
it really does.
Very weird to be sitting here like this many people and nobody has a mask. But, that's kind of one of those things that kind of shifted with everybody's mentality. The idea of wearing masks was such a foreign idea in March of 2020, just total resistance to it. And I know I've never looked at it as being comfortable. Right. But it was interesting that I had that sensation of discomfort not being in a mask, right? But some of that, they're wondering if there's this pandemic was a catalyst to other habit changes. Some of the things
we learned what dwell time is and contact time. Nobody knew what that was beforehand, right?
Yeah.
And then the other details like, oh, you have to clean first. What? Clean? Why do you have to clean? It says it's a one-step disinfectant. Doesn't that mean one step? No.
It's spray and wipe. No, that's not how that works.
Yeah. And what we learned how to wash our hands.
Well, that's the other thing. There were some articles that came out in the last couple of weeks regarding a real big shift in our culture, essentially. Where people are washing their hands a lot more than they used to. And the thought is that this is a change that's probably going to stick. It's never going to rebound back to the point of maybe where it was.
So, I mean, been thinking about it, didn't really kind of ponder it much, but the flu season's pretty much over, right? And there's literally no flu. Now I know a couple people here were sick last week, but it was just a common cold at that point, because I guess because we've done such a good job of washing our hands, and I mean, even though the mask mandate thing is going to be off in Bullen here, you still wear it a lot more than you would otherwise. So we're staying a lot healthier than we have been before.
Well, there's a lot of documentation that's been put out regarding the fact that there are almost no other sicknesses during 2021.
Yeah.
You know, like 2020 and 2021 were remarkable, where the common flu almost ceased to exist.
Yeah.
And people weren't complaining about sore throats and sneezing and coughing and all that kind of stuff unrelated to, like, obviously a COVID infection, but all these other things we normally fight against were not there.
Yeah.
And so the issue was that everything that people were doing, including wearing masks, including washing hands, using hand sanitizer, using methods of extreme cleanliness as it relates to disinfection. I mean, all those had an effect on all on all the other infectious diseases that we normally have to deal with. You know, that's pretty telling. Like, wow, we can, you know, do things as human beings that kind of make us a little bit safer.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that, you know, we were talking about a little bit is, you know, even the environments you put yourself in and whether or not they're safe. I mean, you were surfing in the Pacific Ocean. So I imagine that was, as long as there were no like big dorsal fins sticking up, you were probably okay.
There's no sharks in this area. Maybe a man of war every now and then. Like which is a bad jellyfish.
Yeah,
to put it lightly.
Yeah, so you didn't have to play around in the pool. You were able to go into the ocean.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. And what I've heard about pools, oh boy.
So there was a chemical biological warfare expert did an article on that recently, and they were testing all these pools. Actually, in this particular instance, the tests were pools located in Las Vegas, Nevada. So, so what they did is they took all these samples of pools, and then they had like these random, you know, fake samples, and they sent them all in to get them all tested. And of course, the fake samples had like nothing really in them. They put like funky stuff just to make it look weird, like glycerin, so it looked like there was something in there. But you know, glycerin won't hurt anybody. It's what's in Vaseline, you know. But what they did find was like completely horrifying. I think I told you when I read this, I was like, that was the most horrifying article I've ever read in my life. So they were finding things like Giardia and Cryptosporidium, which are parasitic organisms, you know, that get into your gastrointestinal tract. You know, like, are you kidding me? And then some of the other stuff they were finding was like Shigella and norovirus and all of that. But, you know, one of the ones that was kind of like most hilarious is they also happened to find, get this, it was Las Vegas. So they found some ketamine, opiates, and trace amounts of cocaine. Shocker.
Yeah, that sounds like a definite pool party going on there.
I don't know, man, but some of those left that pool party and went to 2 weeks worth of antibiotic treatment.
Yeah.
So one of the things that came out of that was like, if you're swimming in a pool, you know, swim with your mouth shut. so,
sounds great. Yeah. I want to take my float out and kind of float around in that for about a half an hour or so.
Well, you know, the Pacific Ocean has its own like continuously active form of self purification, I guess. Yeah. So, you know, it's ocean water, right?
A few more gallons too.
So, you know, that's a form of continually active purification, I guess, you know, not to be confused with continually active disinfectants, which is something that we've been talking about.
Wait, germ washing alert, germ washing alert.
Yeah, so the school's still out on this one, man.
Oh boy.
There's some articles that have come out recently showing that there's more research being done on this because there's a lot of claims still being made. I remember the one that germwashing.com called out on one of the airlines. Like, you can't just go in and spray it and like you're good to go for 9 months or whatever. It was silly stuff. It's not that continually active forms of antimicrobials have been around for a while, but they haven't been used for disease-causing things. They were used for odor-causing elements or things that would cause deterioration to fabric, you know, on chairs, upholstery, clothing for that matter. But the claim of a continuously active disinfectant is one that you and I have taken issue with. Like, don't tell me it does it without showing me the proof, right? Like, we haven't seen the heavy duty proof come out of the R&D, but we're bringing it up because there seems to be a resurgence of interest in investigating it.
Yes.
And to determine, I suppose, for once and for all, is there validity to the claim, or does this need to be like squashed and or brought out into the open saying like, this is not for disease, but there's a lot of people that have tried some of these things. I mean, there was just a webcast earlier this week. It had Paul Meacham and Laurie Sewell and Tricia Holderman in it. And that was a pretty cool, concept of what do we have to look at. One of the questions that came up was like, well, what do you think of these CADs? And I think it was Tricia that said, they tried it somewhere and everywhere the soap dripped on it, it turned green. So they ultimately had to strip it off. And Paul Meacham said that he hadn't seen any specific scientific validity to it. And of course, Paul Meacham comes from he's a past CDC. So I mean, I trust those opinions.
The big problem with this one, and we're not shy about pointing stuff out that isn't necessarily.
No, nobody's ever accused us of being shy, Scott.
Well, this is it's touted as a peer-reviewed content, and unless you know better, which we do, there's a way of checking whether or not labels have data on them to substantiate their claims. And as we've stated very clearly in the past, it's one thing to say you have supporting test data that shows XYZ does ABC or whatever it happens to be. That doesn't mean, as one of our old guys who used to work here, that doesn't mean squat-ta, unless it's approved by the EPA, right?
Here in the US.
This is implying that this particular product that's covered in this article, and we're not going to say who it is right now, but keep an eye on germwashing.com. It implies that because there's third-party data that their product is effective against C. diff. Residual claims against C. diff, that would be a miracle. And actually, I think we've talked about that before when the airline thing is like, hey, if you got a product that could have residual activity on soft surfaces for a month, how come it's not being used worldwide? It's because it didn't work. That's why.
Right.
Yeah. So this one is. So I looked up the label. The label that for this product that says it's going to have residual activity against C. diff is only effective against Pseudomonas and staph. Which that's nice.
By the way, bacteria.
Yes, bacteria, no viruses, which was also stated on the webinar we just talked about. They very clearly stated, very importantly, that it's not effective against, most of these things are not effective against viruses. So I'm very disappointed that this particular product was promoted as if it, I mean, if you didn't know any better and you read this article, I'd go out and buy this stuff because it sounds like it has residual activity against C. diff.
Well, the part that kind of threw me was the bold statement at the top that said this is peer reviewed, which makes you insinuate, or interpret that to mean that it's subject matter experts have approved the material, and that's not true. So people have done some studies. I get that. I'm good with that. But we can't make claims on any kind of products as far as a disease killing disinfectant without valid proof supported by the EPA. So
and the reason it's that tightly controlled is you don't want to give people the false impression that then they let down their guard on what their proper procedures should be. If they think something's effective for a week or a month or whatever, they're not going to do what they're supposed to be doing in the interim. And then potentially somebody could end up getting seriously ill or sick or whatever the situation is, get something really bad because of it. So, I mean, we're not just pointing this out because we got a dog in the fight or whatever the saying is, but we're trying to keep it real here. So
we really don't have a dog. We have the opposite of a dog in a fight. Like if we came across chemistry that could truly do that we believed in, and had some conviction behind it, we would grab it and we would put it into an offering that we could offer for sure. I mean, that's kind of what the Bullen Companies is all about. So it's just what germwashing.com attempts to do in bringing things out is to level the playing field. Let's get rid of the things that tend to confuse people. It's a form of misinformation, which is a word we learned in the last 2 years too. So it can be used incorrectly to lead people down into the wrong direction. And as long as the playing field is level and everybody's working off of facts.
Don't forget, you can always get this or our follow-up product. If your breath's bad, it's probably because you were eating your edible face mask. Remember that one?
Yes, I do, man.
The sourdough bread that fit over your mouth that you could eat as well as it would keep you safe.
Yeah, and if you sneezed, it wouldn't leave the bread. The concept of consuming it afterwards was almost as bad as talking about that swimming pool.
I mean, if you look back on all the stuff that we've gone through over the last 2 years, I mean, it's very sad and terrible that all the loss of life and everything else, but there's some crazy stuff been going on for the last couple of years. You know, that edible face mask was a killer. You know?
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling.
Well, on that note, we have to go, but keep in mind, National Cleaning Week is coming up next month, right?
Yep, March 27th, April 2nd.
Yep. That'll be something a little different this year compared to previous years. I don't even remember it last year, quite honestly.
No, I think we were, preoccupied with like COVID mask or maskless weeks, So, but yeah, I think it's awesome that's coming up, and I think there'll be a lot of attention put on it. And I'm a big believer that the cleaning industry is the true front line of defense for the outbreaks that we've been facing and will face. And as much as I consider the healthcare community to be my heroes, in general, they really have to respond to an outbreak. They're reacting to those events, and they're relying very, very heavily on us, on the cleaning industry itself, as being the front line of defense, trying to do what we can to help prevent an outbreak from occurring. So anyway, that's National Cleaning Week, and we'll get a chance to toot our horn a little bit, I guess.
That's right. Well, I'm going to put I'm going back out in the waves, Mark. See you later, man. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Good to be back in the saddle and doing another show. So thanks a lot, Mark. We'll see everybody in a couple of weeks, but thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
See y'all.